Charlemagne, the casting votes.
Well, by the way, that's what's so scary about it. Like,
right, that you have to think.
And by the way, you didn't have to want this to happen.
But you're talking about, I know, but you're talking about a guy who has 91 criminal charges, a guy who says he wants to be a dictator for a day, a guy who says we should rip up the Constitution.
Against a guy who doesn't know what day it is.
And that's what I'm saying. So if Biden has done all of these great things and he's up against that and we're still not sure
I need a name, Charlemagne.
Is he winnable? I really don't know.
You got to give me a name.
Who's going to win?
Biden v. Trump.
It's not
rematch.
Dean Phillips.
It's not going to be Dean Phillips. I really, truly don't know. If I had to say right now, I would say Donald Trump.
Wow. There we go, the casting vote. Charlemagne the God, the man with his finger on the pulse of America.
It looks like Charlemagne is going to be voting for Trump this coming election. This is Vivek Ramaswamy in the Breakfast Club doing a school session. And I wanted to share this video with you guys.
Verbalonlife.
My name is Noel. This is Verbalonlife. Take a look.
One direction of the Republican Party is a belief that it is the job of the U.S. government to play the role of global policeman, to establish a surveillance state here at home, to be able to defend what they will call national security. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just describing what the view is. And that whatever it takes, fighting those foreign wars, having people who have interests in them running the government, and people who are adopting a surveillance state here at home, that's the right vision. We've had that Republican Party before. I didn't vote for it. This is George Bush, Dick Cheney. Back in 2004, I voted Libertarian because I did not want to vote for that agenda in the time of the Iraq War and otherwise. Nikki Haley, I believe, is a representation of that George Bush era Republican Party. There are people in the Republican Party that want to see that be the future of the Republican Party, that want to fork over more money to Ukraine, that believe and agree with Nikki Haley that for our national security, we do need to require every citizen to tie their social media account and their internet profiles to their government-issued ID and driver's license. I disagree with these things, but that is a view. I think Dick Cheney would agree with that. I think the post-9/11 Patriot Act proponents would agree with that. I think that the George Bush era, Karl Rove era, Lindsey Graham Republicans would agree with that. And that's one vision for the Republican Party. It's not mine. My vision for the Republican Party is one that you could call a libertarian nationalist vision, which says that two simple ideas. The people we elect to run the government should be the ones who actually run the government, not the bureaucracy. The people we actually elect should be the ones that actually make the laws, not a bunch of bureaucrats.
Yes.
And number two is the moral duty that they owe. The sole moral duty of the U.S. president and every elected official is to the citizens of this country, not another one. That's a very different vision than the Dick Cheney, Karl Rove, Nikki Haley, George Bush, John Bolton view, which exists in the Republican Party.
That don't look like
so that's the choice.
That don't look like Trump's Republican Party either, though.
Well, I think I respectfully disagree with you there. I was in this because I believed I was going to lead that to the next level with clarity. But I think that Donald Trump
have corporate donors in there, and you know that they're beholden.
So I'll tell you what I favor. I'm not speaking for anybody else but myself here. I'm here as a private citizen today, not even as a political candidate.
And Vivek didn't have donors. He donated to his campaign. He put up his own money. So
I'll tell you what I stand for. I don't think that we should have super PACs in American politics. I think the super PACs, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept. They're a cancer on American politics.
There's a movie about it. It's called 88. You should watch it.
Okay.
It's on Stars and Hulu right now.
All right. Sounds good. Back to my, that'll probably be my inaugural movie. I haven't watched one in a long time. I think that the super PACs are cancer on American politics. I think lobbying is a cancer on American politics. As I said, I don't think you should be able to leave the government and lobby that same government ever, but at least for 10 years after you've left. If you've done special favors for a company, I don't think you should be able to join the board of that company. This is my issue with Nikki Haley, right? She's scratched Boeing's back, gave hundreds of millions of dollars of special benefits in South Carolina. As soon as she leaves government, has a board seat waiting on none other than Boeing, the company that apparently can't even fly planes in the sky anymore. I don't think congressmen should be allowed to trade individual stocks. I don't think bureaucrats should be allowed to trade individual stocks. Actually, my first job was in New York City at the hedge fund world. I work with some pretty smart people here, and I've met most congressmen. I could tell you they would be better off not trading individual stocks unless they were actually using inside information from Congress and from their bureaucracies to their advantage. I don't think that should be allowed. Now, these aren't Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. I think we need to get the influence.
Everything you just described,
both parties. It's both parties. I mean, if you look at, I hit Nikki Haley on this, but you take Elizabeth Warren. Everybody knows what her salary is, and now her net worth is disclosed as $68 million. I know how you make $68 million, and it is not from collecting the salary of being a U.S. senator. And so If you look at the net worth, it's actually an interesting exercise. If you look at the net worth of people who have spent their entire career in government, that math does not add up. And so that's one of the core elements of my campaign. I think it drew a lot of people to us, which is the people we elect to run the government, the congressmen, the senators, the president. Say what you will, agree or disagree, they should be the ones who actually run the government. It's not too much to ask. Today, that's not the case. They're all puppets. It's really the permanent state, the bureaucrats that are running the show. And the second thing is the moral obligation they owe is to the citizens of this country, not another one. So yes, I come down on the side of saying that we should be using our taxpayer resources. We should be using our military resources. Radical idea here, to protect an invasion across our own border sooner than we're using it to protect an invasion across somebody else's border.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too much to ask. But the fact that that's controversial, both in the mainstream media narrative of American politics today, and even in the Republican Party, says that, yes, the thing we need to decide in the Republican Party is not me or Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. Forget the personalities. Who are we and what do we actually stand for? I think the Republican Party should become the party of 1776. The party that says,
What is that?
we stand for the ideals of the American Revolution. Self-governance, free speech, open debate, that you get to speak your minds openly as long as I get to in return.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's just an incredible showing. More Republicans should do this. They just don't have the intelligence or the balls to actually do it. And nor are they interesting enough to actually invite onto these programs. But Vivek Ramaswamy did it, and it's pretty impressive. He also talked about slavery on this show, which is a very dangerous thing to do because obviously this is an urban radio show. But Vivek Ramaswamy making points about the founding fathers and slavery and how we focus on the wrong thing. We should focus on the abolitionist activism of America's founding fathers and not the actual the slaveholders. We should focus on the end result and not the original sin. Amazing stuff. Watch.
Now,
The man just gave him a history lesson on both political parties and super PACs. He's great to listen to, you know. He should be like a college professor or something. But then he went on and talked about slavery. Let's take a look.
now, don't be the person who was the slaveholder back then. Be John Adams. That's what we should call ourselves to be. The person who bucks the trend of their time to say, I'm going to speak on my own conviction and do what's different than being the product of my own time. Because anybody can parrot what the slogan is of their day. But the hard thing to do is to say the pack is running this way and I'm going this way instead anyway, because it's grounded on my conviction.
People like John
That's
Adams,
what we need.
People like John Adams are the reason you can point at it and say it was wrong, though, because John Adams knew it was wrong.
Well, a lot of people are going to be doing things today that are different than the way that each of us is going to be living our lives and say the same thing in 250 years from now. Somebody else is going to be having the same conversation. Abe Lincoln wasn't around then, man. That was still
later on.
That was still later on. And we'll just take the story down. We'll just pass this lineage down. We don't talk American history enough. Actually, it irritates me. A lot of conservatives talk about the importance of knowing history without actually just talking about history. Let's talk this through. So John Adams, you know who his son is? John Quincy Adams. He's the first non-founding father who became a president.
Okay.
Here's a funny fact about him. He was the first, so outside of the founding fathers, he was the first one who was elected president. He actually wasn't a great president. He was elected out after one term. People didn't love him. And so he tried to find everything else he could do. He went and tried to write some books, and he went and tried to start some nonprofits, and none of that spoke to him. He's the only president, John Adams' son, who went back to Congress after being a president. So he's elected to multiple terms of Congress. And you know what he went back to Congress with? Was one thing he regretted not doing as a president, was abolishing slavery. This is long before Abraham Lincoln comes along, okay? So he wanted to abolish slavery. His father was an abolitionist. He didn't accomplish much during his tenure as president. He was a good Secretary of State, but he was not a very good president. Think about the humility to say, I'm not even going to go to the Senate. I'm going to go become a congressman and get reelected multiple times with the mission of abolishing slavery. Now, here's what happens. There was a rule that Congress passes. It's called the gag rule, which stopped people from using the word slavery. Like they literally couldn't use the word slavery because they didn't want people to utter the word because it made them uncomfortable. So this guy's already been the U.S. president. Okay, so he has nothing to lose. He's just a congressman now. He says, I'm going to say the word. I'm going to say it, slavery. Slavery, slavery, slavery. There. Congress has set the rule that you can't say the word slavery. Well, I'm going to say it. So they censure him and have, just like they have today for George Santos or whatever, they'll have the equivalent of kicking him out of Congress. So they have his trial in Congress. And he uses his own personal trial because this guy's got nothing to lose. They use his own personal trial for saying the word slavery when you're not allowed to say the word slavery to make the case for abolition from the stand of his own trial to being kicked out of Congress. At the end of that, they get rid of the gag rule. So you're allowed to say slavery, which opens up the debates that you're then allowed to have. So a year later, about a year or so later, he's given a speech on the Congress floor. I mean, it's amazing. This guy with this humility. He's given a speech on the Congress floor. He has a stroke in the middle of his speech. He dies right there. He doesn't die quite yet. They take him up to the upstairs room, keep him alive for another couple days. And eventually he dies up in that anteroom outside in the same Congress where he then devoted that later stage of his career. And they took volunteers for who's going to be the person who carries out his funeral rites and carries him out. And the guy who raises his hand and does it was a first-term congressman nobody had heard of, hadn't said a word, by the name of Abraham Lincoln. And so these are the stories of our history, man. We don't tell these stories anymore.
And
we celebrate, we put back our founding fathers and we talk about how these people are slave owners and we're going to dismiss the ideals they set into motion without recognizing that, like us today, these are imperfect human beings that still strived and to be the best that they possibly could have, just as we do today. And so it bothers me deeply for us to just lazily reject that, as opposed to saying we acknowledge those imperfections, but we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union.
Absolutely, but the reason
the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all.
You can't just dismiss it and say, okay,
I'm not dismissing
Thomas
it, though.
Jefferson
Do I sound like I'm dismissing it, Charlemagne?
Yes, but the reason
I disagree with you, man. And I
the
think
reason
that
you can't say
if you're going to
Thomas
put me in the
Jefferson-
category of the conversation we had and saying that I just dismissed it out of hand, I think that's unfair. I just think that's unfair. I don't think I dismiss it, but I acknowledge the totality of what a human being is, which is an imperfect and flawed human being who we can still celebrate.
I'm fine with that, but you can't.
That's what we have to be.
But you can't tell people just to ignore the fact that Thomas Jefferson.
I'm not telling people to ignore it, though, and this is what I think I'm in this to unite the country, and I think if we're going to take this seriously, every one of us has to acknowledge the full nuances of our history in every direction. To say that we're not going to listen to Thomas Jefferson or that our founding was illegitimate because they were deeply imperfect and flawed is every bit as bad as somebody who's going to say that I'm going to entirely dismiss the fact that they were slave owners. I think that both of those are mistakes that could lead to the failure of our country as we know it. I think our country will cease to exist if either side of our debate is, on one hand, willing to say, oh, slavery was some made-up myth, and actually, I don't know, it was in the interest of, people could say such things, it was the interest of black people to be slaves, whatever.
Ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I think that if we have a different side that says our founding fathers who wrote a Declaration of Independence founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union, right? The pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all, not claiming we're perfect, but that we're a nation founded on freedom for all who aspire to have it, and that we're imperfect, but we eventually got there 250 years into as darn close as we've ever been. To reject that and say that we can't celebrate that founding because they made a mistake of being slave owners. I think that is every bit as bad for the future of our country versus acknowledging that we are still pursuing that more perfect union.
What I would say is what you talked about with Thomas Jefferson when he took the razor and he took out some of the philosophies that he agreed with. We should take some of those things that we agree with, but then everybody should come to the table because all was not at the table when those people wrote those documents.
We got that.
We have too much of a diverse country now.
We understand that.
Okay.
We got it.
But my point is not rejecting that or taking a hammer to it. It's more of a different response. It's like, we got it. Like like at a certain point, we've got to say, we've got it.
We don't though.
No, but
we can, but we don't.
We got it. And now it's time for 360-degree mercy, clemency, forgiveness across the board, and that we're moving forward as one nation.
It sounds like Charlemagne the God is holding on to systematic racism for dear life, and he doesn't want to let it go.
Under God. And I think that moment is now, actually.
Vivek is a great speaker. Like, he gets people's attention and not afraid to go up against mainstream media that don't like him or not in favor of him. So for him to go in the Breakfast Club and have this discussion, shout out to Vivek. Let's see, maybe Trump will pick him. Probably not, but if he did, he'll have a killer with him. That was an excellent video and I had to share it with you guys.
Verbal on life. verbalonlife.
Let me know what you think. Click on that like button and click on that subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Peace.